Today, like most days, we have ourselves a challenge. Today's challenge is building a walk-in closet. I like to start out most cabinetry with what I call a sub-base. I take meticulous care to make the top of the sub-bases perfectly level and flat. I do this by using flat shims like laminate, MDF, and even playing cards. So let's seal you in. I make a register mark on my combination square. I set that on top of the sub bases and shim them up until the register mark lines up with my laser line. I do this across all of my bases and attach the bases to one another. It's pretty fussy work, but well worth the time. Next, I bring in all the floors I pre-cut in the shop and I lay them out. Everything has been measured carefully. It's a pretty tight fit. This is my method of lining up the partitions perfectly with the floor and ceiling parts. Using a straight edge clamp, I align the floor and ceiling parts, mark them, and engage the clamp at those marks. And in walks the biscuit cutter. I make sure the biscuit cutter cuts dead center of the end of the 3/4 inch partition. I do this by making a slot into the edge of 3/4 inch scrap, flipping it over, doing it again. I adjust the fence plate up and down to get it just right. This is pretty tedious, but you're setting yourself up for success. Once you're all lined up there, you take the floor and ceiling parts, place them flat together and flush on the ends. Then you measure where you want your vertical partitions to line up. Make your marks, flip the fence plate on the biscuit joiner up. Clamp your straight edge onto your marks. Align the edge of the biscuit cutter up with the edge of floor and ceiling parts. Place the joiner tight against the clamp that's holding the floor and ceiling together and plunge your cut. The edge cuts are a little tricky because of the weight of the tool, but if you gently rock the tool back and forth, you'll feel when it's riding flat on your workpiece. One note about the biscuit cutter is, with the face plate flipped out of the way, the cutter plunges out of the tool already centered for a 3/4 inch piece of material. So when it's up against a straight edge clamp, the center of the cutter is 3/8 inch away from it when you face cut into your material. You know, you might question, like, what types of biscuits are there? And pretty much they come in sizes of 0, 10, and 20 being the largest. I pretty much always use 20s. And there you have it. All of the slots are cut into the floor and ceiling parts now, with the lining slots into the ends of the vertical partitions. The hardwood biscuits line them up perfectly with one another. I'm really hoping all that makes sense, because this is where the rubber meets the road. We're going to slip biscuits into the slots and set the partitions where they go. This works perfectly with the ceiling parts when they come into play. I'm working alone, so I use a scrap piece of 1x to keep my partitions from flopping over. I'll add screws whenever I want to and just try to keep them in places and where they're not going to be seen or they're easy to cover with fillers. The trick here with the plexiglass works well, especially with planning out the alignment of my biscuit slots. This wall has a belly into the room. I line a laser up to 2-inch marks at both ends, and this helps me identify how much and where that belly exists. I place my partition in place and see that the front of it exceeds the front of the floor by about 3/8 inch. So all I have to do is set it in place, and with one of my 3/8 inch shims, trace a line onto the partition and cut the line. And just like that, voila. It fits pretty okay. Just set it onto my biscuits and run it tight to the wall, and bamski. Now for the fixed shelves, I place a piece of plywood flat on the floor and face cut biscuit slots into the partitions by setting my cutter onto a piece of plywood. This keeps them all at the same height. I toe screw them at the bottom of the shelf. That way you can't see them and I just fill them later. Okay, closing in on one of my last moves is making a face with a square cutout at the window openings to let light in but keeping the privacy game elevated. This may be my best idea to date, and it's surprisingly simple. Now this old bedroom can become a walk-in closet, laundry room combo. I kind of feel like we smoked this project out.